How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your September 2019 horoscope for Capricorn, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. Just to start right into it, this month we're starting September off with Mars conjoining the Sun in Virgo. Now, Mars, of course, is the planet of our action, our drive, our intentions, what we're doing, what's being energized. And Mars in the sign of Virgo is focused on specifics, on the details, bullet point lists, and focusing on the, analyzing everything and getting all, kind of like just focusing on detail, really. But Mars is also a malefic planet, so it brings frustrations, it brings anger, it brings, it severs, it cuts, it heats things up. So while Mars is in Virgo, it can be a little bit challenging. However, while Mars is conjoining the Sun, this is when Mars is kind of getting purified with, the light of the sun and being burnt through the fire. And while Mars is conjoining the Sun, this is a really good opportunity to really look at where you're really taking action on things and where you want to take action on the specifics. This is happening in your ninth house, and the ninth house is all about our beliefs, your sense of spirituality, what religion you have or religion you practice. It's all about far distance travel, foreign cultures and languages, as well as publishing and higher education. So while Mars is conjoining the Sun in Virgo to start the month off, and we're going to be talking a lot about Virgo for this whole horoscope, so just be patient with me here. There's a lot of stuff to go over. But while this is happening, I think this is a big time to really look at what beliefs do you have or that you want to grow into, that you have faith in, that you need to start actually taking some action on now. Then 2 days later on September 3rd is when we have Mercury conjoining the Sun and going Cazimi in Virgo as well. And this one's a little bit more important because Virgo is Mercury's house. That's Mercury rules the sign of Virgo. So while Mercury, the planet of communication, ideas, our mindset, how we're expressing and vocalizing those thoughts, while it's being basically purified by fire and conjoining the Sun, this is a big time to kind of get the mental clarity that you're really looking for when it comes to your faith and it comes to your belief or when it comes to your education, where it's like, hey, this is not only what I want to start doing, but now I'm realizing what I want to be doing and what I do believe in and what is actually possible out there for me. As we move forward on September 4th, 7th, and 10th is when we're going to have Venus oppose Neptune, Mercury oppose Neptune, and the Sun oppose Neptune. Now, I want to bring all of these into one thing because it's going to be kind of like a bing, bam, boom. But while Venus is in Virgo, Venus is in her sign of fall. She's not as potent as she usually would be, and she can kind of struggle with bringing Venusian things into this area. Now, while Venus is in Virgo, she wants to beautify and, put all of the love and attention into the specific details, but sometimes she gets so caught up in that she can't do every single one. That's kind of like the Venus-Virgo thing. Now, while Venus opposes Neptune in your ninth house, this is a kind of a time of where Venus and Virgo is starting to realize, like, hey, these are the smaller, tiny details that I value. What am I not valuing, or what am I putting attention to that I really shouldn't value, that really doesn't require me to value it, require me to believe in it, require me to focus on it. And as Venus opposes Neptune, I think this is just becoming more and more clear and getting around the fog, letting that fog kind of lift up on what you believe, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to execute, and really looking at, if you got to focus on the details right now, you can't make every single one perfect and put all the value and beauty you want. It's really about a process of elimination of what requires your time and what doesn't require your time, what requires your belief and your faith and your focus and your sense of optimism, and what doesn't. And then as Mercury opposes Neptune, this is more of where the mental clarity starts to come in, because while Mercury is in your ninth house and you're starting to become more, tapped in, tuned in, and turned on to what you're kind of believing, what you're going through, what you're thinking about, Mercury opposing Neptune is kind of deciphering between, this is a belief that does serve me and this is a belief that should work, that will work for me, versus this belief doesn't really serve me anymore and it doesn't really make sense to hold on to this belief. Mercury uses a lot of logic and a lot of facts to really, decipher what means what. And so as Mercury opposes Neptune, this is kind of like getting that mental clarity of like, hey, this is worth my time and my interest and my attention, and this isn't worth my time, interest, and attention, or my belief. Then as the sun opposes Neptune, this is kind of like where things start to become more experienced, you know. Venus was kind of like feeling it out, Mercury was mentally understanding it, and now the sun opposing Neptune is kind of like seeing it brought into your day-to-day life and within your vitality. You know, what does it feel like to make to make changes and, believe something different? What does it feel like to believe something that's more self-serving to you and that's more specific and catered to your needs and what you want to do? As the sun opposes Neptune, I think this is a good time to take off the rose-colored glasses and look at reality, and that's not always a bad thing. That can often mean taking off the horrible beliefs that you can have about yourself that don't help you, and finally getting rid of those and being like, I'm going to start believing in things that actually do help me and that actually do encourage me to keep doing me. Then as we move on to September 13th, that is when we're going to have Mercury conjoin Venus in Virgo. Now, while Venus is in Virgo, again, we're actually starting to value, the details and the specifics and the knowledge and the knowing and the, being, I guess, clear on the message. While Venus is starting to see and enjoy the value of that and really exploring it in the 9th house, Mercury conjoining Venus is kind of expressing that and putting it out loud. And Mercury conjoining Venus is kind of like, you know what, that's, again, another mental click of like, I actually really enjoy this. This is something I'm actually wanting to pursue, and this is actually something that is making more sense for me. And I know you guys are Capricorn rising, so everything has to be serious and mundane and whatever, but as Mercury conjoins Venus, this is a really good opportunity to be like, hey, if I just focus more on the details and believe and have faith in the facts and in the truth, then things will actually start to play out in an easier way, in a more harmonious way for you. Then also on September 13th is when we have the full moon in Pisces. And while Mercury is conjoining Venus in Virgo, kind of going like, hey, I actually really believe this. This is starting to make sense. And this is, I'm really seeing the value being enriched here. This full moon is happening in your 3rd house. Now, the 3rd house was a lot of different things like your siblings, your neighbors, short distance travel, basic education and teaching. The 3rd house is also really about how you utilize yourself and how you're utilizing yourself. And this full moon being right here is kind of like giving you the idea of while Mercury and Venus are conjoining, things are making sense, things are clicking. This full moon in Pisces, like, it's time to start doing something about it. It's time to start being a little bit creative of how I can go about this. What do I know already that I can use in order to, fuel and, sponsor what I'm wanting to learn and what I'm wanting to grow into now. And so I think this full moon in Pisces is going to be a really good time to just kind of like get the ball rolling on a different, not even on a different thing, but just more on the things that you're experiencing and learning and that you're wanting to grow into. Then on September 14th, that is when we're going to have both Mercury and Venus, while they're conjoining each other, enter Libra. And this is a pretty big energy change because Venus is going from her sign of fall to her domicile sign, her ruling sign, her own house, where Venus can do her own things. And Venus, of course, the planet of love and value and bringing things together and making things nice and pleasurable and, dealing with other people. As she goes into her home sign of Libra, Venus can actually express these qualities at her highest potency because it's under her control and it's under her domain. And Mercury being on top of this right here, also going to Libra, is bringing your mindset being involved into this, being more, vocalizing these thoughts and these feelings. And this is the sign of Libra. This is about, diplomacy. This is about bringing things together and finding the balance between this side and that side. Now, both Mercury and Venus are entering your 10th house of your career, of your public, how the people see you and your vocation in life. And as Mercury and Venus enter your 10th house, I think this is where that attention of, where Mercury and Venus were in Virgo, kind of focusing on your beliefs and maybe more of what you want to do and what you want to grow into or go experience. Mercury and Venus are starting to bring that into a bigger world picture of like, where are you gonna import that 9th house growth that you just had and bring it into 10th house execution, 10th house initiation. This is a cardinal sign, so this is about beginning things, and I think this is about beginning to finally start to find some more balance and some more harmony and some more value in your career area. But also on September 14th is when Mars will oppose Neptune. And while Mars is in your 9th house still, going over like, this is what I believe, and if I believe this, then I need to do these specific details. Mars opposing Neptune is like looking back at that Neptune fog of like, I'm not sure what I can do. I'm not sure where I can go. I'm not sure of what I know. Mars opposing Neptune is kind of like, me thinking I don't know these things, or me, thinking I can't learn something new, isn't serving you. And as Mars opposes Neptune, I think this is a time to really rely on the facts and to rely on the truth, and kind of really utilize those facts to your knowledge of like, hey, if you don't have the facts on this thing, don't focus on it. Focus on what you do know, and focus on those qualities of things that you already know, because it's going to bring more faith into you, and that's going to bring more belief to you. And that Mars opposed Neptune is kind of like, you kind of have to believe in the facts and you go off those, and you can't just always go off of, what fears can come up in your head. Then on September 18th, we finally have Saturn stationing direct, and I'm sure more than anyone else, you guys are the most excited for this, because Saturn's been going through your first house, and it hasn't been easy. It's been a lot to take on. It's been a lot to handle. And Saturn's retrograde brought you guys a lot of responsibilities, a lot of, walls and barriers you had to get through. But the most important thing is that Saturn retrograde had lessons for you to learn. Now, as Saturn stations direct in your first house, this is where it's a time to go, what lessons did you learn now, and how are you going to implement them into, real life experiences, actually put it out there on the field. And as Saturn goes direct in your first house, this is about, establishing those boundaries that you've needed to set for yourself, being more, having more an authoritative voice. And that doesn't mean, having power over someone, but being stronger and being more, having more composure with who you are, and being more strong and sturdy in that stance of that belief of who you are. Saturn right now is kind of toughening you up, and right now this is the time to implement what lessons and what shit Saturn brought to you into your life. And it's kind of like a maturing thing. It's kind of like a, hey dude, I've been through this shit before. I've been through this shit, and it's taught me something important, and it's time to take on those attributes and those disciplines and actually bring it into my sense of self. Then on September 21st, we're going to be having Jupiter make its third and final square to Neptune. Now, this transit has been happening about all year, and this transit's really been about the truth prevailing over the confusion. As Jupiter first went over it, it was kind of like, hey, we have all this room to grow into, we have all of this optimism, but it's clouded with this fear of the unknown. And as Jupiter went retrograde, squared Neptune again, this was kind of like, there's more to be revealed. And as Jupiter is now direct, moving forward again, this is more of the truth and more of the opportunity prevailing over, things that aren't the truth, things that are, cloudy and foggy and that don't make sense, things that are dualistic. And with this happening in your 12th and in your third house, I think this comes down to, we talked about this at the beginning of the year. I don't know if you guys watched those horoscopes, but with Jupiter being in your 12th house, where there's this light and there's this, this, I should say opportunity, but this optimism, the sense of faith and hope within your sense of self and your subconscious, this is starting to come alive. And Jupiter squaring Neptune is kind of like, you may not know exactly how you're going to do it, but that doesn't matter. All you need to focus on is your why. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? What is inspiring you, and what are you trying to create? And as Jupiter squares Neptune, I think that truth of your why is going to be more powerful than the confusion and the mysticism of can you or not. Then as we go into September 23rd, the Sun enters Libra and goes into your guys' 10th house, where now Mercury, Venus, and the Sun are in your 10th house. The light gets focused onto your career and what you're doing in this world. The 10th house is for everyone to see, so this does have to incorporate a lot of bigger life stuff, and isn't always so specific with, it is specific with career, but it just is more of an umbrella place where bigger life stuff and things that everyone can see are apparent. And then on September 25th is when we have Venus squaring Saturn. Now, I bring this up because this is usually a pretty hard transit, but I think there's something to really dive into here, because while Venus is in her domicile sign, Saturn's in her domicile sign, Venus is in the superior position, and Venus is in Libra. This is kind of like, hey, there's value, there's connection, there's compromise to be brought here, and that's in your 10th house of your career. That's of your 10th house of how people know you and how you're recognized. And I think what Venus squaring Saturn is going to be like for you guys is kind of like when people give you admiration and value and, express that to you, who are you to say anything different and say, no, I'm something different that you don't know? Saturn in your first house, it can be so easy to restrict yourself. It can be so easy to put blocks and walls, but that Venus square to it is kind of like, hey, you know, you may be feeling down or shitty about yourself or putting yourself into a box, but that's not necessarily the case within your career and how people see you. There's an opportunity here, and people are you're being brought into the light and being, you know, the value's being brought to you. And as that's squaring Saturn, like, you're gonna have to get over it. People love you, people actually like you, and people want to accept you. But while Venus is squaring Saturn, I think this is also about establishing the right boundaries, having the right amount of discipline, being, you know, having a sense of balance with where you put those walls and that seriousness up, and also where you relax and you let people, you know, acknowledge you and bring love in. And then we end September with the new moon in Libra on September 28th. And this is just, it's a new moon. It's where everything's focused on one sign. It's like resetting your intentions, kind of getting the water leveled out. And this is happening in your 10th house of your career and bigger life stuff. And so this is an important time for you guys. And I think this new moon is really about looking at, you know, what have you learned over the past few months with all that Mars-Saturn bullshit you had to go through, and how are you bringing that into harmony, and how are you bringing justice into your life on a bigger scale by bringing more value? And I say the word value a lot because there's value in anything, and there's a million ways to describe what value is, but this new moon in Leo is kind of like, focus on where to bring that peace and where to bring that order and where to still have that sense of fun onto the bigger picture. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next month.